Hey there everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. I'm going to be using new products today from Simon Says Stamps Be Creative release. What's really fun about the card that I'm going to be sharing today is I'm going to be incorporating a clear overlay. I don't know about you, but if you've ever seen cards in the store where they have some sort of clear layer that is over top of the design, and oftentimes there's something on that clear layer. Well, I thought it'd be fun to do that on this card, and I'm going to be using new lightweight acetate from Simon Says Stamp to do this. I'm also going to be using this gorgeous, fantastic florals stamp and coordinating die set. So this clear overlay is going to have the florals on top of it, and they're going to look like they're floating, which is a really neat design element. I started first by stamping all the images that I wanted to use onto some white cardstock with Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink. And I'm going with a very soft color palette. I started first with Aspen to stamp this large leaf layer, and then I brought in the stems and stamped that with Woodsy. This is going to be the main stem on my card, and then I'm going to have some smaller florals that I'm stamping from that same fantastic floral stamp set. For this floral, I used Cantaloupe and then Sherbet for the darker layer. What's also neat about this fantastic floral set is that you can mix and match the images to create your own flowers, which I think is fun because you can customize it for however you want it to look. On this floral, I used Morning and Twilight to create that nice tone-on-tone effect. And then finally, I brought in a smaller blossom, and I'm going to stamp this with Cheeky. For the center of this flower, I actually brought in some Twilight to kind of go along with that Twilight color in the other floral. Now I'm working on stamping another stem. This is a darker leaf layer that's going to get put behind my main stem. So this is just going to be peeking out in certain areas. Oscar, of course, was sitting around hanging out with me, and that's why you see his tail poking in and out of the camera. For the stem on this floral, I chose some fawn for a lighter tone. Now I'm going to use the coordinating dies, and for this I'm going to hold down all of the dies with very, very low tack tape from Simon. This is my go-to tape for whenever I'm working with die cuts. I want to make sure that my tape doesn't actually harm the paper or my stamping after I run this through my die cut machine and remove the die and tape from my paper. So I cut all of these different images out, and now I'm going to start working on stamping my panel that's going to go behind the clear overlay. I'm using Simon Says Stamp's Stamp and Stencil mat. This is a new product from the Be Creative release that is super helpful for aligning stencils or stamps. And I'm going to be using this cling stamp. I'm lining it up inside of the black markings. The black square is the exact size of a 6x6 cling or a 6x6 stencil. And then the teal markings are for your A2 size cards. So now my stamp is going to be perfectly aligned in the center of my card. This mat is super durable, and to get your paper off, you're going to want to fold the two sides towards each other so that way you can pop the paper right off of the sticky surface. This won't harm the mat at all. I'm going to then cover the stamped image, which was stamped with embossing ink, with embossing powder, and then I'll use my heat tool to set this. It's hard to see because this is white powder on top of white paper, but when I go to do the ink blending, you'll see the design come out. So I'm going to use Morning ink from the same ink that I used to do some of my stamping. As I'm applying the ink with my blending brush, you see that beautiful parallelogram design coming through. I'm very carefully adding just a very soft layer of ink. I want the center area to be the darkest and then fade it out as it goes towards the edges. For a bit of shine, I used some silver distress spray stain to add a few splatter areas. So at this point, I'm ready to make my clear overlay. I've cut a piece of the lightweight clear acetate to be 4 1/4 by 6 inches. I want this to be the exact same size as my A2 card panel, but I need an area that I can adhere the acetate to. So I'm going to score on the acetate at 5 1/2 inches. Now that leaves me with 1/2 inch to work with to fold over the back side of my card panel, and that way it will be attached and seamless on my card. I'm using my bone folder to burnish that score line so it's nice and crisp. And on the back side of my parallelogram background, I'm going to apply some red line tape. I chose red line tape because it sticks to pretty much any surface, particularly specialty surfaces like acetate, wood, metal, those kinds of materials. I'm going to line up the folded edge of my acetate into that adhesive, and now you can see we have this little overlay attached to our panel. This needs to now get attached to our A2 size card. So I have a white card base top folding that I glued this onto. Now I'm going to attach my floral elements onto the clear overlay. I'm using thin 3D foam squares from Simon's Stamp to attach these and arrange them in a nice little sprig across the middle of the card. Once I have these attached, you can see how those float on that acetate, and we have this adorable overlay on top of that parallelogram purple background, and it looks so pretty. My sentiment is actually going to get pulled from an older stamp set. This was released earlier this year from Simon Says Stamp. This is the SWOOPY flower set, and I really liked the delicate thanks greeting. I stamped it with embossing ink onto cornflower blue cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I'll white heat emboss that. I'm using hot hands to hold this paper so I don't burn my fingers. With the coordinating die, I'll lay this over top of the sentiment and then hold it down with very, very low tack tape so I can run this through my die cut machine. Now I was getting a little finicky here, but you don't have to go this crazy. I used very teeny tiny pieces of foam squares to attach to the backside of my thanks so it's popped up off of my card, but you could have just used liquid glue. So we're almost done, but I did decide to add one more little embellishment, and that was to apply a few clear sequins here and there around the card. These aren't necessary, but I do like the added delicate touch of the sparkle here and there around the card. And I just love how that clear overlay sits on top of our parallelogram background. It's soft and beautiful, very airy, and creates an elegant finish on this card. And this card really isn't that bulky, and I don't think it's going to need any extra postage. Well, I hope you enjoyed this card. I had a lot of fun making it, and I can't wait for you to come back again tomorrow, which will be Friday, February 17th, because I'm going to have another acetate idea for you. Actually, 3 ideas using clear acetate. So I hope you come by and check that out too. Until then, I hope you'll check out the new Simon Says Stamp Be Creative release. I have all the links to the products that I used today, as well as the release itself, in the video description, as well as on my blog. So be sure to check all that out. Until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching.